The first thing anyone noticed about the HFY siege ships wasn't their size, though they stretched 15 kilometers from bow to stern, but the way they made the sky wrong. They hung motionless above Earth's major cities like metallic tumors, their crystalline hulls refracting sunlight into prismatic cascades that painted the clouds in alien hues. For 3 days they had simply waited, silent and terrible, while humanity held its collective breath. Commander Yxandra Vell stood in the observation deck of the lead vessel, her 6 arms folded in a gesture of contempt as she gazed down at the blue-green world below. The third planet of this unremarkable system had been marked for resource extraction for nearly a solar cycle, but the inhabitants had proven problematic. Unlike the hundreds of worlds the HFY Dominion had previously harvested, this one had refused to surrender upon the arrival of the siege fleet. "Status report," she commanded, her voice a harmonious blend of frequencies that made the bridge's atmospheric processors hum in resonance. "Navigation." Officer Kethver consulted his bio-neural interface, tendrils of living data flowing across his scaled forehead. "The native population continues to evacuate their urban centers, Commander. Their military forces have withdrawn to hardened positions, approximately 50 kilometers from each city. Most curious, they appear to be digging in rather than fleeing entirely." Yxandra's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Brave little insects. Their courage will make no difference when we begin the culling." On Earth's surface, Colonel Raven Thorn Maxim crouched in the makeshift command bunker, carved into the bedrock beneath the Colorado Rockies. Banks of quantum processors lined the walls, their cooling systems casting everything in a blue-white glow that reminded her uncomfortably of the alien ship's light. She had been awake for 72 hours straight, coordinating humanity's response to the most existential threat their species had ever faced. "Ma'am," called Lieutenant Ezra Nighthawk from his station, his fingers dancing across holographic displays. "Orbital Defense Grid reports all stations are green. Project Longbow is ready for activation on your command." Thorn Maxim nodded grimly. For the past decade, Earth's greatest minds had worked in secret on humanity's ultimate insurance policy. Hidden in mountain ranges, ocean floors, and even the lunar surface, 367 railgun installations waited in perfect silence. Each one was capable of accelerating a tungsten steel penetrator to 15% of light speed fast. Enough to punch through any known shielding technology. The aliens didn't know about Project Longbow. How could they? Humanity had learned the art of deception from centuries of warfare against themselves. They had made their cities look defenseless, their military weak and scattered. Let the invaders think they faced another helpless world ripe for conquest. Dr. Kamal Okafor Singh emerged from the physics bay, his face bearing the exhausted satisfaction of a man who had just solved an impossible equation. "The targeting solution is complete, Colonel. We've mapped their shield frequencies, identified weak points in their hull structures, and calculated firing sequences that will maximize penetration. When we pull the trigger, every shot will count." Above them, the HFY siege ships began to descend, their crystalline hulls gleaming with the promise of annihilation. Yxandra had grown tired of waiting for surrender. The harvest would begin at dawn. What neither side realized was that the next few hours would redefine what it meant to be human in a universe that had forgotten the meaning of defiance. The HFY bombardment began at 0600 GMT with surgical precision. Coherent energy beams lanced down from the siege ships like divine judgment, each one calibrated to disable rather than destroy. The aliens wanted the infrastructure intact, the resources untainted by excessive destruction. They had done this dance across 1,000 worlds, and it always ended the same way, with submission, surrender, and the systematic stripping of a planet's wealth. What they hadn't counted on was humanity's talent for making warfare an art form. "Commander," Yxandra watched the tactical display with satisfaction as her weapon systematically eliminated what appeared to be Earth's defensive installations. Primitive missile silos crumbled under focused particle streams. Surface-to-air batteries melted into slag. The humans' pathetic attempts at resistance were being methodically erased from existence. "Commander," Kether reported, "we are detecting unusual seismic activity from multiple locations. The readings suggest extensive underground movement." "Vermin scurrying to their holes," Yxandra dismissed. "Continue the bombardment. Focus on the population centers. Once we've killed enough of them, the rest will see reason." 3,000 kilometers away, Colonel Thorn Maxim felt the mountain shake. As alien fire struck the decoy installations they had built specifically to draw attention. Every false target destroyed was a real weapon that remained hidden, waiting for the moment when surprise would matter most. "Phase 1 complete," reported Lieutenant Nighthawk. "All decoy targets eliminated. They're moving to civilian bombardment." "As predicted." "Phase 2 authorized," Thorn Maxim said, her voice carrying the weight of species survival. "Signal all longbow stations, weapons free. Target priority, Alpha. Make every shot count." Dr. Okaforsin's fingers flew across his console, uploading targeting data that represented years of theoretical physics compressed into moments of practical application. Firing solution uploaded to all stations. Synchronized strike in 3.2. Execute. The first indication the Kethmori had that something was wrong came not from their sensors, but from the sudden silence of their communications array. The second came when Navigation Officer Kethver's head simply disappeared, along with a significant portion of the bridge's port bulkhead. The tungsten steel penetrator had punched through the siege ship's shields as if they were morning mist, traveling at 47,000 kilometers per second. The kinetic energy released upon impact was equivalent to a small nuclear weapon, but focused into a projectile no larger than a human fist. Across Earth's sky, 367 railguns spoke in unison, their magnetic coils unleashing humanity's response to the mathematics of extinction. The trails of superheated plasma they left behind painted the atmosphere in brilliant silver lines, turning the sky into a deadly constellation of human defiance. Yxandra staggered as her flagship bucked under multiple impacts, emergency lighting bathing the bridge in crimson warnings. "Report!" she shrieked, her harmonious voice now a discordant cacophony of rage and disbelief. "Multiple hull breaches. Shields are down. We're losing atmosphere on deck 7 through 15. The voice belonged to someone Yxandra couldn't tell who. In the chaos, but the panic was universal across all 6 of her remaining tactical officers. Another railgun round punched through the siege ship's primary reactor housing. And the lights went out, on Earth. Lieutenant Nighthawk's display showed the impossible. Alien vessels, each one a technological marvel representing centuries of advancement, were burning in the sky like falling stars. "Ma'am," he said, his voice thick with awe, "Project Longbow has achieved 93% target saturation. 17 enemy vessels are confirmed destroyed, 41 are critically damaged and losing altitude." Colonel Thorn Maxim allowed herself a brief smile. "Good, now comes the hard part." Because humanity had learned something the Kethmori hadn't. Sometimes the best defense is making your enemy realize they've made a terrible mistake. The crippled Kethmori siege ships fell from the sky like dying gods, their crystalline hulls shedding fragments that burned through Earth's atmosphere in brilliant cascades of alien fire. Some crashed into the ocean, sending massive tsunamis, racing toward coastal cities. Others impacted mountain ranges, their deaths carving new valleys and turning ancient stone to glass. The largest of them, Yxandra's flagship, managed a controlled descent into the Sahara Desert, its emergency systems barely keeping the massive vessel from complete annihilation. Inside the fallen ship, Commander Yxandra pulled herself from the wreckage of her command throne, her 6 arms trembling with shock and pain. 3 of her bridge crew were dead, their bodies crushed by debris when the ship's artificial gravity failed. The others moved through the smoke-filled air like ghosts, their bio-neural interfaces flickering weakly in the crimson emergency lighting. "Damage report," she commanded, though her voice lacked its former authority. Senior Engineer Mythgal, his carapace cracked and leaking vital fluids, consulted what remained of the ship's systems. Hull integrity at 37%, main reactor offline. Life support failing on all but 7 decks. Communication array completely destroyed. "We are ... stranded, Commander." The word hung in the recycled air like a death sentence. In 3 millennia of conquest, no HFY expedition had ever been stranded. They were the hunters, not the hunted. They were the ones who reduced civilizations to archaeological footnotes, not the ones who fell burning from alien skies. "What of the fleet?" Yxandra asked, though she already knew the answer from the silence that surrounded them. "Unknown, Commander. We are detecting no active HFY signals. The humans' weapons. They were far more advanced than our intelligence suggested." On the surface, Colonel Thorn Maxim stood atop the reinforced observation deck of Forward. Operating Base Prometheus, watching the alien ship's final moments through high-powered optics. The vessel had come to rest in a sprawling crater of its own making, its hull split open like a cracked egg. Steam rose from the impact site as the desert sand, superheated by the crash, began to cool. "Initial assessment complete, ma'am," reported Captain Felix Starweaver, the leader of humanity's first xenarchaeology unit. "The ship appears to be intact enough for boarding operations. Bioscanners indicate approximately 2,000 life signs still active within the hull. Survivors," Thorn Maxim mused. "Good, we'll need them." Lieutenant Nighthawk looked up from his communication station. "Ma'am, we're receiving surrender transmissions from 14 other crash sites. The aliens are requesting ... asylum." The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the command center. 24 hours ago, these same beings had been preparing to harvest humanity like wheat. Now they were begging for protection from the very species they had come to destroy. Dr. Okafor Singh joined them on the observation deck, his tablet displaying preliminary analysis of the alien technology. "The energy signatures are fascinating. Colonel, their shield generators operated on principles we haven't even theorized yet. If we can reverse engineer their technology..." "We'll worry about that later, Doctor," Thorn Maxim interrupted. "Right now I want to know how they found us, why they came, and whether they're alone." The answer to that last question was already traveling through the quantum foam of hyperspace, riding the crust of a tachyon pulse that would reach the HFY homeworld in approximately 6 standard days. The message was simple, transmitted by the automated beacon every siege ship carried: total expedition loss. Natives hostile. Extreme technological capability. Recommend planetary sterilization. What the beacon didn't convey was the deeper truth that Commander Yxandra was only beginning to understand as she surveyed the wreckage of her fleet. Humanity hadn't just defeated the HFY expedition. They had done it with a level of tactical sophistication that spoke to something far more dangerous than advanced weapons. They had done it with patience, with planning, with the kind of strategic thinking that came from a species that had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other. As the sun set over the crash site, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold, Colonel Thorn Maxim made a decision that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. They wouldn't just interrogate the survivors. They would learn from them. They would understand their technology, their culture, their weaknesses. And then, when the next alien fleet arrived, because there would always be a next fleet, humanity would be ready. Because if there was one thing humans had learned from their blood-soaked history, it was that the best defense was always a good offense. The first human to set foot inside an alien vessel was Sergeant Major Kira Moonshadow, a career soldier whose grandmother had survived the Mumbai orbital bombardment during the Third Corporate War. She moved through the crystalline corridors of the downed HFY flagship with the careful precision of someone who understood that every step might be her last. Her combat suit sensors painting the alien architecture in ghostly blue overlays. "Jesus," she whispered into her unit, her voice barely audible over the ship's dying mechanical systems. "It's like walking through a cathedral made of living light." The HFY had built their vessels as much for aesthetics as function. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with bioluminescent patterns that shifted and flowed like captured aurora. Emergency lighting cast everything in deep purples and greens, creating an environment that felt more like the inside of a giant organism than a starship. "Remember, Sergeant," came Colonel Thorne Maxim's voice through the "these beings just tried to genocide our species. Don't let the pretty lights make you forget that. Copy that, ma'am." Moving to the bridge level now. 3 decks above, Commander Yixandra huddled with her surviving officers in what had once been the ship's primary strategic center. The chamber's central holographic display flickered weakly, showing scattered data from the few sensors that remained functional. She could hear the humans moving through her vessel's corridors, their electromagnetic signatures blazing like crude torches against her ship's sophisticated detection grid. "They're being remarkably careful," observed Tactical Officer Zeftan, his voice carrying a note of grudging respect. "No unnecessary destruction, no random violence. They're conducting a methodical search." "Professional," Yixandra admitted, the word tasting bitter in her mouth. "I had not expected such discipline from a species we classified as barbaric." The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Every assumption the HFY had made about humanity had been catastrophically wrong. The intelligence reports had described a fractured civilization barely capable of interplanetary travel, a species that spent more time fighting itself than developing coherent defensive strategies. The reality was something else entirely. When Sergeant Major Moonshadow finally reached the bridge, she found the aliens waiting for her. Not hiding, not preparing an ambush, but standing in formation with their hands, all 6 of them, in the commander's case raised in what was obviously a gesture of surrender. "Well, that's new," Moonshadow muttered, keeping her weapon trained on the group while she activated her suit's translation protocol. "Command, I've got contact with survivors. They appear to be ... surrendering." Colonel Thorne Maxim's voice crackled through the "Confirmed, Sergeant. We're reading their biosigns. No aggressive posturing, no weapon signatures. Proceed with caution." Yixandra stepped forward, her posture regal despite her circumstances. When she spoke, the translation software rendered her words in heavily accented English. "I am Commander Yixandra Vel of the HFY 3rd Siege Fleet. I formally surrender my vessel and crew to your authority." The moment stretched between them, heavy with the weight of history. Here was a species that had conquered 1,000 worlds, brought low by the one civilization they had underestimated. Here was the first time in recorded galactic history that a HFY expedition had failed so completely. "Ma'am," Moonshadow said into her "I think you need to hear this." An hour later, Colonel Thorne Maxim stood face to face with the alien commander in a hastily constructed containment facility. The HFY was taller than expected, her 6-armed form elegant despite the obvious exhaustion. Her skin had a scaled, iridescent quality that shifted colors in the artificial light, and her eyes, all 4 of them, held an intelligence that was uncomfortably human. "You want to know why we came," Yixandra said without preamble. "You want to know if others will follow." "That's a start," Thorne Maxim replied. "But what I really want to know is why you thought you could win." Yixandra's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "Because we always win, Colonel. In 3,000 years of expansion, The Dominion has never encountered a species capable of effective resistance. Your world was supposed to be a simple resource extraction operation. And now? Now, Yxandra said, her voice carrying the weight of inevitable truth. You have made yourself the most dangerous enemy the HFY have ever faced. When word of this defeat reaches the Dominion Council, they will not send siege ships. They will send the Annihilation Fleet. Colonel Thorne Maxim felt a chill that had nothing to do with the facility's climate control. How long do we have? 6 months. Perhaps 8 if the bureaucracy moves slowly. But they will come, Colonel. And when they do, they will not make the mistake of underestimating you again. Outside, the sun was setting over a world that had just learned it was no longer alone in the universe. Humanity had won its first battle against the stars themselves. But as Colonel Thorne Maxim was beginning to understand, victory was just another word for the prelude to the next war. The interrogation of Commander Yxandra revealed the scope of humanity's new reality with mathematical precision. The HFY Dominion controlled 1,700 star systems. Their military-operated fleets that made the siege ships look like patrol boats. They had spent 3 millennia perfecting the art of planetary subjugation, and they had never not once encountered meaningful resistance. Until now. Show me, Colonel Thorne Maxim demanded, studying the holographic display that Dr. Okafor Singh had constructed from the alien ship's data cores. The 3-dimensional map of local galactic space rotated slowly, each system marked with symbols that told the story of conquest and assimilation. Here, Yxandra indicated with one of her 4 arms, pointing to a cluster of red markers near the galactic rim. The Velthari Empire 12 systems, population approximately 40 billion. They resisted for 3 standard years before capitulation. Here, she moved to another section, the Christet Collective 9 systems, highly advanced cybernetic civilization. They lasted 18 months. And the longest resistance? Dr. Okafor Singh asked, his stylus poised over his tablet. The quantum hierarchies held out for nearly 5 years. They developed phase shift technology that allowed their ships to exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Impressive, but ultimately futile. Colonel Thorne Maxim studied the map with the eye of a strategist who had spent her career preparing for impossible odds. What makes you think we'll be different? Yxandra's mandibles clicked in. What the humans had learned was her equivalent of a bitter smile. Because you didn't just defeat us, Colonel. You made it look easy. In 3,000 years of conquest, we have never lost an entire siege fleet in a single engagement. Our intelligence network is vast, our reconnaissance thorough. Yet somehow, you managed to build a planetary defense grid that remained completely invisible until the moment you activated it. The truth was that humanity's greatest advantage wasn't technology, it was paranoia. The same species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare against itself had applied those lessons to the stars. They had learned to think like prey while building the tools of predators. The Annihilation Fleet. Thorne Maxim pressed. Tell me about it. 500 vessels, Yxandra replied, her voice carrying the weight of inevitability. Planet killers, every one of them. They don't attempt conquest, they simply sterilize worlds that prove too troublesome to subjugate. The Dominion has learned that some civilizations are too dangerous to be allowed to exist. Dr. Okafor Singh looked up from his calculations. 500 ships. Based on the technology we've seen from the siege fleet, we're looking at firepower equivalent to... He paused, running the numbers again. Approximately 50,000 nuclear weapons, each. The silence in the command center was profound. Even with Project Longbow's success, humanity's entire nuclear arsenal couldn't match the destructive capability of a single HFY vessel. However, Yxandra continued, the Annihilation Fleet operates under different protocols. They maintain distance, execute systematic bombardment, and never approach within range of planetary defenses. They learned this doctrine from the few worlds that managed to inflict casualties on siege fleets. "Cowards," Lieutenant Nighthawk muttered. "Practical," Yxandra corrected. "The Dominion has discovered that the most dangerous enemy is one with nothing left to lose. So they ensure that resistance is impossible by removing the possibility of hope." Colonel Thorne Maxim walked to the observation window, staring out at the desert where the alien flagship had created its own crater. In the distance, recovery teams were already beginning the process of salvaging technology that might make the difference between survival and extinction. 8 months, she said finally. 8 months to prepare for the end of the world. Or, Dr. Okafor Singh said quietly, 8 months to figure out how to take the fight to them. The idea hung in the air like a challenge to the laws of physics themselves. Humanity had never built a starship capable of interstellar travel. They had no understanding of faster-than-light propulsion, no knowledge of hyperspace navigation, no experience with stellar-scale warfare, but they had something the Kethmori had never encountered in 3,000 years of conquest. The absolute certainty that they would rather die fighting than live as slaves. "Begin Project Prometheus," Colonel Thorne Maxim ordered. "Full authorization, unlimited resources, planetary priority. I want every crashed ship stripped down to the molecular level. I want every piece of alien technology reverse engineered, replicated, and improved upon. I want our best minds working on the assumption that we have 8 months to build humanity's first interstellar war fleet." "Ma'am," Lieutenant Nighthawk said, his voice carrying a note of uncertainty, "we've never built anything like that before." "No," Thorne Maxim agreed, watching the sun set over a world that had just declared war on the galaxy itself. "But then, again, we've never had to." In the depths of the alien ship, automated systems continued their millennial function, sending another message into the quantum foam of hyperspace. This one was different from the first, a detailed analysis of human capabilities, tactical assessments, and strategic recommendations. The message was simple: these are not the primitives we expected. Recommend immediate deployment of the Annihilation Fleet. But by the time the message reached the Dominion Council, it would be too late. Because humanity had learned something from their first contact with the stars. Sometimes the best way to prevent annihilation is to become something worth annihilating first. Project Prometheus transformed human civilization in ways that 3 world wars had never managed. Within 6 weeks of the Kethmori defeat, every major industrial center on Earth had been converted to support the most ambitious engineering project in human history. The crashed alien vessels became technological libraries, their secrets extracted by teams of scientists who worked around the clock with the desperate intensity of a species racing against extinction. Dr. Kamala Okafor Singh stood in the cavernous assembly bay of the Luna City shipyards, watching as humanity's first interstellar warship took shape. The vessel was a hybrid of human engineering and alien technology, its hull constructed from the same crystalline composites as the Kethmori siege ships, but reinforced with Earth's own carbon nanotube architecture. It was beautiful in the way that weapons of war could be beautiful, sleek, purposeful, and absolutely lethal. Status report, called Admiral Vera Stormwind, the former head of Earth's Orbital Defense Corps, who had been promoted to lead humanity's first stellar navy. She was a woman who had spent her career preparing for conflicts that remained theoretical until the day alien ships had appeared in Earth's sky. "The Retribution class is 93% complete," Dr. Okafor Singh replied, consulting his tablet. "Primary weapon systems are online, including the scaled-up railgun arrays and the new antimatter torpedo bays. We've successfully integrated the alien faster-than-light drive with our own navigation systems. And the crew? All volunteers," Admiral Stormwind confirmed. 5,000 of humanity's best and brightest, each one selected from over 1 million applicants. They know this is likely a one-way mission. The truth was both simpler and more complex than that. Humanity's first interstellar warship was a testament to their species' capacity for both innovation and desperation. In 6 months, they had accomplished technological advances that should have taken decades. They had reverse-engineered alien physics, constructed manufacturing systems that existed only in theoretical journals, and created weapons that pushed the boundaries of known science. But they had also built it knowing that a single ship, no matter how advanced, could not stand against the 500 vessels of the Annihilation Fleet in the depths of the Sahara. Commander Yixandra watched the human preparations with growing unease. Her quarters in the research facility were comfortable enough, but she was still a prisoner of a species that had every reason to hate her. The humans treated her with professional courtesy, but she could see the calculation in their eyes. She was valuable only as long as her information remained useful. "You're making a mistake," she told Colonel Thorne Maxine during their daily briefing. "One ship against the Annihilation Fleet is not courage, it's suicide." "Maybe," Thorne Maxime agreed, "but it's our suicide to commit. The Dominion will interpret this as an act of aggression. You're not just building a warship, you're declaring war on 1,700 star systems." Colonel Thorne Maxime's smile was cold as winter starlight. "Good, let them know we're coming." What Yixandra didn't understand was that humanity had never been interested in mere survival. The species that had clawed its way from the caves to the stars had always been motivated by something more dangerous than the desire to live, the need to prove that they deserved to exist. The Retribution launched on a Tuesday morning, Earth Standard Time, while half the planet watched on live feeds. The ship's departure was marked not by fanfare, but by the kind of quiet determination that characterized humanity at its best. As the vessel's exotic matter drive engaged and folded space around it, Earth held its breath. Captain Lyra Dawnstrider stood on the bridge of humanity's first interstellar warship, watching the stars shift as they entered hyperspace. Her crew of 5,000 represented the best of what humanity could offer: scientists, soldiers, engineers, and explorers united by the understanding that they were making history with every breath. "Navigation confirmed successful translation to hyperspace," reported Commander Zara Voidwalker, the ship's executive officer. "Course laid in for the Kefmori staging area. Ada, 72 hours. "Excellent," Captain Dawnstrider replied. "Signal the crew. Battle stations in 60 hours. We're going to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity's children." The Retribution was not designed to win the war. It was designed to ensure that the war would be remembered. Every system on the ship had been built with one purpose: to inflict maximum damage on the Annihilation Fleet before the inevitable end. The humans had studied the Kefmori technology, learned their weaknesses, and engineered solutions that would have been impossible without the desperate clarity that came from facing extinction. But perhaps most importantly, they had installed something that the Kefmori could never have anticipated: a quantum communication array capable of transmitting real-time battle data back to Earth. Humanity's first interstellar mission would also be its first lesson in stellar warfare. In the depths of space, 500 Kefmori vessels prepared for what they expected to be a routine sterilization mission. The Dominion had faced desperate resistance before, and the response was always the same: overwhelming force applied from a safe distance, until the planet's surface was reduced to molten glass. What they didn't know was that humanity had spent 6 months preparing for this moment. Every crashed alien ship had been studied, every weakness cataloged, every tactical doctrine analyzed and countered. The Retribution carried with it the concentrated fury of a species that had just discovered it was not alone in the universe, and that its new neighbors were not friendly. As the human vessel dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kefmori formation, Captain Dawnstrider opened a channel to the alien fleet. Her message was simple, broadcast in perfect Kefmori: "This is Captain Lyra Dawnstrider of the Earth vessel Retribution. We are here to collect payment for services rendered. Please prepare to be destroyed. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin. The Annihilation Fleet had been designed to end worlds from a distance, but they had never faced an enemy that brought the war directly to them. The Retribution materialized at the heart of their formation like a missile fired from hell itself, its exotic matter drive creating spatial distortions that sent ripples through hyperspace. For a moment that lasted an eternity, 500 HFY vessels and one human warship regarded each other across the void. Then Captain Lyra Dawnstrider gave the order that would echo through galactic history. Fire everything. The Retribution's weapon systems had been designed by a species that understood the mathematics of mutual destruction. Railgun arrays that could accelerate projectiles to 20% of light speed. Antimatter torpedoes that could crack a moon in half. Particle beam weapons that channeled the fury of dying stars. Every system fired simultaneously, turning the human vessel into a constellation of destructive energy. The first HFY ship to die had been the flagship of Fleet Commander Thalzek Moore, a veteran of 2 centuries of planetary sterilizations. The antimatter torpedo that ended his ship's existence also served as humanity's formal introduction to stellar-scale warfare. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away, a brief new star that marked the moment when Earth's children announced their presence to the galaxy. Direct hit on the command vessel, reported Commander Voidwalker, her voice carrying the fierce joy of a predator that had just tasted blood. Multiple secondary explosions across their formation. Their scattering. The HFY had never experienced anything like this. Their tactical doctrine was based on 3 millennia of fighting civilizations that cowered before their overwhelming technological superiority. They were prepared to reduce planets to slag, not to engage in close quarters combat with an enemy that seemed to have no concept of self-preservation. All weapons continuous fire, Captain Dawnstrider commanded. Target their drive systems. I want them stranded here when their reinforcements arrive. The battle that followed redefined the meaning of asymmetric warfare. The human vessel was outnumbered 500 to 1, outgunned by a factor of thousands, and facing technology that represented 3,000 years of evolutionary advancement. By every rational calculation, the Retribution should have been vaporized within the first 30 seconds of engagement. Instead, the humans had done something that the HFY had never encountered. They had turned their ship into a weapon of mutually assured destruction. Every system on the Retribution had been designed to inflict maximum damage even as it died. The ship's power core was a controlled antimatter reaction that could be destabilized at will. The hull itself was embedded with microcharges that would turn the vessel into a shrapnel bomb if it was breached. Even the crew quarters had been rigged with explosive charges, ensuring that capture was impossible. Hull breach on Deck 7. Commander Voidwalker reported as a HFY particle beam punched through their shields. Damage control teams are sealing the breach, but we're losing atmosphere. Irrelevant, Captain Dawnstrider replied with the cold calm of someone who had always known this day would come. Continue firing. Target the vessel that just hit us. The human approach to warfare had always been based on a simple principle. If you're going to die, make sure you take as many enemies with you as possible. The Retribution embodied this philosophy in every rivet and circuit. As the ship's systems began to fail under the concentrated fire of the Annihilation Fleet, Captain Dawnstrider prepared to implement humanity's final contingency. Commander, she said to Voidwalker, signal Earth. Tell them we've confirmed the enemy's capabilities and weaknesses. Tell them the data is worth the price we're paying. Transmission sent, Captain. Earth confirms receipt of all tactical data. Good. Captain Dawnstrider turned to address her crew over the ship's communication system. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been an honor to serve with you. Today, We've shown the galaxy that humanity will not go quietly into the night. Today, we've proven that our species deserves to exist among the stars. Today, we've bought our world the time it needs to prepare for what comes next. The Retribution's final act was not a surrender, it was an apotheosis. As the ship's hull finally gave way under the HFY bombardment, Captain Dawnstrider activated the vessel's self-destruct sequence. The antimatter containment fields collapsed simultaneously, releasing the equivalent of a stellar flare directly into the heart of the enemy formation. The explosion that followed was visible from 17 star systems. It carved a new nebula from the debris of alien ships and human dreams, a monument to the moment when Earth's children had declared war on the galaxy itself. Of the 500 vessels in the Annihilation Fleet, 63 survived the encounter. They limped home carrying tales of an enemy that fought like demons, that turned their very deaths into weapons, that seemed to view extinction as merely another tactical option. On Earth, the quantum communication arrays had recorded every moment of the battle. Humanity now possessed complete tactical intelligence on HFY weapons, shields, and doctrine. More importantly, they had proven something that would reshape the galaxy, that the HFY could bleed. The news of the Retribution's sacrifice spread across human space like wildfire. Captain Dawnstrider and her crew became legends overnight, their names carved into monuments that would stand for millennia. But more than that, their death had accomplished something that no amount of diplomacy could have achieved. It had shown the galaxy that humanity was willing to pay any price for freedom. In the months that followed, the survivors of the Annihilation Fleet carried their trauma back to the Dominion Council. For the first time in 3,000 years, a HFY military force had been decisively defeated. The reports they filed spoke of an enemy that seemed to relish combat, that turned their own destruction into a weapon, that fought with a ferocity that bordered on madness. Commander Yxandra, still imprisoned on Earth, watched the human response with growing amazement. Instead of celebrating their victory, humanity had entered a state of total war mobilization. Shipyards that had built one vessel now constructed hundreds. Research facilities that had reverse-engineered alien technology now improved upon it. The species that had once fought only itself had found a new enemy worthy of their hatred. "You don't understand," she told Colonel Thorn Maxim during what would be their final interview. "The Dominion has protocols for dealing with aggressive species. They will not send another fleet, they will send the Void Reapers." "And what are those?" the colonel asked, though she suspected she already knew. "Planet killers," Yxandra whispered. "Ships designed to crack worlds like eggs. They will not attempt conquest, occupation, or negotiation. They will simply erase you from existence." Colonel Thorn Maxim's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Let them come," she said. "We'll be ready." But what neither the humans nor the HFY realized was that the Battle of the Annihilation Fleet had been observed by other eyes, other intelligences that had watched the Dominion's expansion with growing concern. Species that had hidden in the dark spaces between stars, waiting for someone to prove that the HFY were not invincible. The quantum echoes of the Retribution's final explosion had been detected across a dozen star systems, each one home to civilizations that had thought themselves alone in their hatred of the Dominion. For the first time in galactic history, there was hope that resistance was possible, and in the depths of space, construction began on vessels that would carry humanity's response to the stars themselves. Ships that would make the Retribution look like a toy. Weapons that would turn the mathematics of warfare on its head. A fleet that would teach the galaxy that some species were too dangerous to threaten. The HFY had awakened something they didn't understand: humanity's capacity for righteous fury. They had made the fatal mistake of threatening a species that viewed survival not as a goal, but as a minimum acceptable outcome. The siege ships had hovered above Earth cities for 3 days, casting their alien shadows across a world that had never known fear of the stars. Now, Earth's children were preparing to cast their own shadows across the galaxy itself. The war for humanity's place in the universe had only just begun. But the first lesson had already been written in the light of dying ships. When you threaten humanity's future, you become humanity's past. And in the quantum foam of hyperspace, messages raced between hidden worlds, carrying news that would reshape the balance of galactic power. The humans had proven that the HFY could be defeated. The age of the Dominion's unopposed expansion was over. The stars themselves held their breath, waiting to see what humanity would do next.